obviously, when you're touching hearts, it's all about a relationship. So I think right from then on, I knew that my main job as a brother and a teacher is to make sure I'm aware of every student, of where they're at, how they're doing, especially the students that just seem sort of off there on the peripheries or not quite so involved.
Developing relationships, I think, is the bedrock of education. It's the bedrock of working with people, working with young people, certainly. There's no way that I can get in there and support the young people, the students I work with, without having a relationship with them. I have to build up that trust. I have to be vulnerable myself in order for them to begin to open up to me. And I find that I go back to my experience in high school as, what was important to me. It wasn't the content per se. It was the relationship that I had with my teachers and counselors and campus ministers.
And, I'm speaking, of course, as a theology teacher, but I know that science teachers and math teachers and of any discipline, I think the more connection you have with young people, where you ask questions about them outside of their schoolwork, where you show up at their games or their theater productions or their band concerts, whatever it might be, really shows them that you have a vested interest in who they are as a person inside the classroom and outside the classroom.
It took me to my mid-50s to discover that there's nothing more important in the world than relationships. As it says in 1 John, how can you say that you love God when you don't love your neighbor? Because how can you love God whom you don't see, when you don't love your neighbor but you do?
Well, I think there's a lot of parts of the incarnation that would apply to relationships in general, and certainly in a teacher-student kind of dynamic and relationship. First and foremost has to be, I think, the indescribable, cherishable, profound nature of the human person, and that demands respect of all of us in both ways, teacher to student, student to teacher, that we meet each other on sacred ground. I always think of the image of Moses up on the mountain, taking his shoes off because he's on sacred ground. And it seems to me that our classrooms and every other encounter we have with our students and they have with us ought to be, they aren't always, but ought to be, taking place on sacred ground.
For me, and this is a very counselor answer, but it's about listening. I find that the more that I listen, and I listen without judgment, and I think that secondary piece is of equal, if not more important, that is when students open up. That is when students want to invite me in, and I'm able to build and create that relationship. If I'm not listening, if my ears and my heart are turned off to a student, to their situation, to their local context, whatever may be going on at home or in the community, I can't enter into anything deeper with them. I can't actually affect any sort of change or support them in affecting change in their own lives.
I just was out for a vacation out in Palm Springs, California. A friend said, come on out and play some tennis. I said, great. The second half of that visit was to be with a friend, a former brother who has Alzheimer's and dementia. And my time with him was spent 9 hours in the emergency room. And I remember at one point thinking, wow, this is unfortunate that this is where we have to be, but how fortunate that I can spend this concentrated time with this guy, who was afraid that he was going to be left alone there. And I had to keep on reassuring him, hey, I'm not going anywhere. If I'm leaving, then you're leaving with me, and that's, I didn't think at the time, oh, this is Lasallian, but you're having me reflect on this, and so I say, that's Lasallian.